Hi, I'm Phil.
And I'm Chuck.
And we're going to talk about the MySwing Pro system. And we're going to look at the avatar and show you how much information you can get directly from looking at the avatar and putting some lines and some angles right on the computer screen itself.
Right.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and play it.
Yeah, first let's look at, again, the utility of watching the 3D from different angles. So we can do a front view and we can play slow motion. We can do a top view. And of course, we can then do a down the target line view. We have the ability to step through, we can play at normal speed, we can play at slow motion, but what we're going to talk about in this segment is how we can look at the shoulder turn and then look at what the lead arm is doing at transition and top of backswing.
Right, which is a critical piece for that lead arm and shoulder.
No question. So go ahead and let's put on the rib cage. Okay. We've looked at this a little bit before when we looked at X factor between the pelvis and the rib cage, but now we're going to look at the difference between the rib cage and the lead arm. So let's go ahead and play it again. All right, stop at top. Come back and stop at the top. Perfect. All right, so we've got about 82 degrees, and as we know from all of the research, it's typically about 90 degrees for a driver. And so this one we stop at about 82. Do we? Let's keep clicking a little bit. All right. Can you come back just before top? Yeah, that's 83. A good point, because again, top of backswing is defined by when the club turns around, not when the rib cage turns around, not when the pelvis turns around. That's the transition of each one of those particular body segments. But what we find and what we'd like to see is the actual rib cage has started turning before the club has hit the top of backswing. And that showed us. It was only about 1 degree.
Right.
And I think in the Tour Pros, I see about 2 to 3 degrees. And what's that mean? That means that we're getting an actual stretch on the shoulder. And there's that stretch shorten cycle again, Chuck.
Right.
So let's go ahead and take off the shoulder, the rib cage angle, and put the lead arm adduction angle. By adduction, we mean coming across the chest. So now we're looking at a joint angle. Before we were looking at, how the segment turns. Now we're looking at how the shoulder comes across the chest. Let's look at that. All right, so what do we see? We see at about 30 degrees. That's really a small angle here, so that's putting a lot of, I want to say stress, but right. Maybe not stress, maybe tension or stretch. Stretch right. Would be a better word. And that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. We want to see that stretching. However, we don't want to see it overstretched at the top of backswing. As you'll see in pictures of a lot of Tour Pros, it looks like the shoulder's coming out of the joint. Right. Right. That's a problem, because if you hit what we call end range at the top of your backswing, you've got bone on bone at that point, and you've got nowhere to go right. Other than just kind of throwing it out. Right. Whereas if we get it to about what we found with Tour Pro numbers, about 45 degrees, that then allows you to turn down with the chest first and get a little bit extra stretch on that shoulder. Right. And that's going to make a big difference to the downswing, isn't it, Chuck?
Yeah, and you can refer to it or think about it as when that starts to happen, you actually feel more pressure going between the inside of your lead arm and across your pec.
Yep.
All right, so when you start feeling that pressure in there, you know that that's starting to move correctly.
Yeah, I like that. And two, if that doesn't happen, in other words, if you start releasing that shoulder too soon, we call that casting, just like casting the club. Right. And what that tends to do is means you're going to go over the top a little bit more, and you might end up with a little flat shoulders and right. Outside in. Right,
and you see a lot of players, you see a lot of amateurs, and they see this left arm across the chest of their favorite player, but they don't really know how they're doing that. So when they get to the top of the swing, they're just trying to go like this and glue it, and that's not how it's done.
No, no, it's got to be that the correct sequential. Right. Again, it comes down to the sequential motion, the kinematic sequence. It's all about pelvis, rib cage, arm, club. It kind of makes sense, the
Right.
way it should go,
Right.
from the ground all the way through.
All right, so let's bring him down a little bit. See, there we go. You see how much it tightened right there? Tightened about 3 degrees, and the initial started at
Yeah,
start
and
down.
now it's starting to open.
Yeah.
So it does not open directly from the top. It actually
Right.
closes in the transition slightly.
Good.
And then releases. That's into the release.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
I think that's good.